You're listening to Podcasting for Experts, with honest conversations about using podcasting as a tool to grow your reach, increase your audience, make a positive impact on the world, and most importantly, to get paid for your efforts. I'm your host, Jess, and we are Pristine Podcasts. Let's talk podcasting. Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is season 2, episode 2, and today we have the first ever interview that we've actually recorded for this podcast, and I am so excited for this. I wanted to give you a little bit of context to these interviews before I introduce you to today's guest, just so you understand a little bit more about why I'm doing them and what I'm hoping for you to take away. So initially, I thought of just putting out solo episodes, share good content every single week that you can apply right away and make use of. The thing that I noticed over the last, 6 or so years of running my own businesses is often it's not a lack of knowledge stopping you from taking action, but it's really your own emotions. It's the fear of what people will think, the imposter syndrome telling you that you're not good enough, and all of that stuff. Those things are what stops you from taking action potentially for years. So I wanted to start this season with balancing out content with different perspectives from others who have been or are on the same path that you are on. And I hope that you find all of these interviews useful. Initially, I will mostly be speaking to different podcasters about their journey because I think that they have a lot of encouragement and wisdom to give. And it's best if you hear it directly from others who are doing the same thing that you're doing. And then later on, we might branch out and get you some more expert content from others as well. I was aiming to keep the interviews around 30 minutes, but boy, I don't think that is way enough time. So I think they will end up getting a little bit longer. I'm not sure if it was because of the internet or not, but on the day that we recorded, I kept hearing this very strange noise while I was talking. So at some point, I stopped talking for a minute and I spent quite a few seconds checking some tech before getting back to it. We'll, of course, edit that out, and I'm hoping that we'll be able to do an amazing job with it. But if there is a moment left where I sound like I forgot what I was talking about and then picked up again at quite not the same point, then you know what happened. And it's just what happens sometimes. With all of that said, I would like to welcome Debra Jacobs to the show today. Debra is a financial coach and the host of the Finance Your Dream podcast, which at the time that we recorded this was, I think, around about 35 episodes. Together, we discussed Debra's background and her personal journey and how that's led her to where she is today, as well as her journey with her own business and how she's using podcasting as a medium to help her audience. And then we also took a deep dive into her motivations for podcasting and how she's felt along this journey. And she shares some really good perspective shifts that I think are going to be very beneficial if you're feeling a little bit apprehensive about starting. With all of that said, I don't want to hold you up any longer, so here is the interview. Hi, Debra. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Hi, Jess. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I appreciated that people come on when something is early, because we're doing the interviews for season 2, and it's been something I've been wanting to do. And then I'm like, oh, who's going to come on the podcast when it's new? And I'm like, this is always, hard to find people who really want to join. So I do really appreciate that. And I like to prepare for all of the episodes. And when I checked on your website, we have something in common that's actually something a little bit odd.
Okay.
Yes. I read that you were running a preschool.
I did for 18 years.
That is a very long time.
So what happened was I'm a single mom by choice. And when my older daughter was 2, I just felt the need to spend more time with her. So I ended up quitting a job that I had had for many years in a nonprofit and opening this childcare program. And at first it was very hard, just because I thought, it was in my home. and it ended up being in a separate part of my home that was very much a school, but my commute was still walking down my stairs rather than, going somewhere else.
Mm.
And for my daughter, I thought she would love being home with mom, and she would have if she wasn't home with mom with a bunch of other kids.
Right, I see.
So at first it was really hard, but it ended up being such a good thing to do over so many years as a single mom. It was a way for me to do work I really loved and to be there when my kids got home from school and to, have other teachers take over in the afternoon so I could do other things and take my kids to activities. And it never made me rich, but it worked really well for our lives.
It doesn't. The interesting thing about daycare is that people always, because of the prices, assume that, you must be rolling in the dough. But honestly, after having run a daycare center, I just know that a lot of the times the bills, they pile up thick and fast, wages, insurances for people, and then resources. And if you ever have to replace a chair and you realize the chair ends up costing like $250 to like seat one baby at the table, it doesn't compare.
Absolutely. By the time I paid my teachers, paid taxes for my teachers, paid my expenses in terms of supplies and, a lot of expenses. So,
yeah, I get that. So that's what I was doing beforehand. And I think I get always the most random feedback because people that know me now, they're like, oh, what? You used to work at daycare? And I was like, yes. But then I worked my way all the way to the top. And then I was living in London at the time. And to be honest, there was nothing left at the end of the month. Like I paid all my bills. My rent ate half of my pay. And I was never going to get anywhere. I was literally never going to end up doing the things I wanted to do, traveling the places I wanted to go to. I was like, I'm stuck here basically. And then there wasn't a growth pathway. So once you'd become manager, you could go working for the local authorities and being like an area manager and stuff like that. But to be honest, those jobs, they've been cut by now because the government doesn't want to pay for early years education. So
it's very sad, the way that teachers in general are looked at and early childhood educators in particular. In the United States, it's a little bit different where a growth path could have been opening a private preschool. And then if you really wanted to grow, maybe a string of private preschools, but that wasn't a direction I wanted to go in.
Yeah, it's something that takes a lot of responsibility as well, I have to say. Like the center I was at had 70 full-time places. And then we had parents where there were times where they couldn't afford to pay their bill. Like things have been very tight. And then they've come in with allegations against teachers that they've hurt their children to get out of paying the bill because they try to leave. And, I haven't actually slept because when you register for a daycare center in the UK, you are the registered person. Although you are not the owner, you are the person that has daily responsibility for what happens to the children. And you're the designated safeguarding person. And so it was all of that on my shoulder for £24,000 a year. Wow. And I was like, I'm not getting anything for this. Like, I can't live like that. So I got very frustrated. And then I started looking, I'm like, there's got to be something else out there, right? There's got to be people who are able to travel, who are able to earn money without having to go back to study something else that I don't like. And eventually I ended up discovering this whole online thing. And now, I don't know, it's been 6 years that I've been like working online full time. But that's where I thought it was very interesting. My money thoughts from back in the day and what I'm worth and what I deserve to be paid, like in quotation marks, I guess, they're still, they were very strong for ages. Like if I felt like I had money over at the end of the month, I was like, oh, this makes me feel very uncomfortable because, usually it's just all 0. Every single thing that comes in has a purpose before it goes out. And I don't know, it took me so long to feel okay about having more money or about charging more than my hourly rate used to be and all of those things. It was very, very, very difficult. Did you have any thoughts around money in a similar way?
Well, we all have stories about money. And I think that working in a nonprofit and then opening my childcare program wasn't necessarily the cause of my thoughts as much as the result of my thoughts. And what I mean by that is I grew up with this idea that, you could either do good in the world or you could make money. That there was no common ground between those two. And of course, that's not true. You can do good in the world and make money. But it took me a long time to get to that. So I don't think I experienced guilt as much as, that's just not for me. Thinking about money isn't for me. Making a lot of money isn't for me. We'll do fine. We'll get by. I was always able to provide for my children. We didn't take fancy vacations, but we took vacations. I was always very frugal. And, I didn't think about money really in the way I should. And that actually leads me to what I'm doing currently, which is, ironically, financial coaching. And how that came about was all of those years of not paying attention to my money and saying later, later, later. And, I'll learn about investing later. I'll learn about saving later. Right now, I have...
Retirement is a long way away. I'll think about that later.
Exactly. And, I just kept putting it off, and all I really felt like I had the bandwidth for was my business and my kids. And again, that's a story. It wouldn't have taken that much effort to just put aside a little money every month, to invest a little money every month. But I didn't. And it wasn't until my kids got older and a little bit of space opened up in my life, and I started looking at my finances because I had gotten myself into some debt. In the United States, we have IRAs, retirement accounts. I had a very small amount that I every once in a while would put something into, but nothing in a sustained way. And I finally did a reckoning and said, this is not good. And I really have to start learning about this. And once I started learning, I got interested. And it was just, who knew that personal finance could be so fascinating?
That's me.
And I did a really deep dive. I read every book. I listened to every podcast. I read every blog. I took courses. And I started transforming my own financial life. Now, I'm still a work in progress. So, I still have a ways to go. But when the pandemic happened and I closed my preschool, with the intention that 3 weeks later I'll open up again. Of course, we all had that intention.
Of course, yep.
And that didn't happen. That was, as we all know, the pandemic went on. And as I was at home with my kids, one of the silver linings for me with the pandemic was that my young adult children were home with me, and they wouldn't otherwise have been. But another silver lining was that I started doing what for a year or two had been a little bug in the back of my mind of this little side hustle doing financial coaching. And I just never got around to it with the preschool demands and everything else.
I know, from early to late, and always somebody's sick and some problem that needs to be fixed. It's hard.
And I'm on the phone at night with a parent, and we're, doing conferences, and we're doing assessments, and, all of that. It takes a lot. So here I was, and I said, wow, this is a great opportunity. I can actually start this thing. So here I am. That's what I did.
No, I think that's really amazing, because so many times we think that we can't get around to doing something because, you just don't have the time. Or it's not often the time, actually. I find that I am out of energy, I guess, at night, to do that extra thing, because I have so many different things that I already care about, and I'm trying to pay attention to all of them. And it makes it quite difficult because there's just not another thing that I can sort of put on top of it. And sometimes it's hard to let something go. And generally you wouldn't, if you've put that amount of effort into running a business for that length of time, it's very hard to let it go.
Yes.
So maybe in this case, it was fortunate to sort of be forced to let it go, because it made the space that, you need it available to go and actually build something else up, which I think is going to be way easier on you.
Yes.
Long term, way more fun, way more impact.
Yeah. Sometimes when you're forced into something, you just do what you have to do. And that's what I did. And, this is where I want to be. So, so it all worked out in the end. I mean, I loved the preschool. I loved the kids. I missed the kids. But, I did it for 18 years and I was ready.
Yeah. I have to say that I do miss the days when things have gone really well and the kind of cozy atmosphere and those things, like especially when it's a rainy day outside. I used to think of how we used to lie down and read books together, and it was very fun. Yes. But then also I know that long term, as much as it's fun just there and then,
right,
it's just long term not quite the thing that's going to build you that freedom.
Yes.
In particular.
Yes.
So your podcast is called Finance Your Dream.
Yes.
Which I think is very interesting. How did you pick the name?
Okay, so this actually gets into one of the big issues that I'm having with my podcast, which I'm happy to talk about. And that is that as a single mom, my heart lies with the single mom community. And I started the podcast with a different name. The name was Money, Parenting, and Life for Single Moms. And I had many, many episodes all outlined. I knew exactly who I was talking to. I knew exactly what I wanted to talk about. I really wanted to talk about money and single parenting. And because I'm who I am, I wanted to talk a little bit about parenting too, because that's just, who I am. And the podcast was growing, my audience was growing. And then I started working with a business coach. And she was wonderful and taught me many things. One of the things she suggested was not necessarily to broaden the audience of my podcast, but to not talk just to single moms, to figure out what's the problem people are having and talk to the problem. And so, I thought about that a lot, and I thought that the problem that I had and that a lot of people have is that you have a dream for something. For me, in my 30s, it was, I want to be a parent, and here I am at the end of a long-term relationship, and how am I going to do this financially? And for other people, it may be traveling, or it may be starting a business, or it may be whatever. And so the problem is you have this dream. How do you make the money work? How can you live creatively? How can you live differently than the way you've been taught that you should live in order to make that dream come true? So I changed the name. I started speaking more broadly. And in that process, I feel like I lost my voice a little bit. And I did a lot of soul searching and decided that that's a great idea, but the people I really want to speak to on the podcast are single moms and other people who may be interested in what I'm talking about, but primarily to single moms. I get the dilemmas. I, understand the situations. And so I have a few more episodes that are going to be aired, that have already been recorded, that are a little bit more broad. And then I'm going to move back to focusing on single moms. I think I'm going to keep the name and maybe add a tagline, because it is about financing your dream, whatever your dream may be for yourself and your kids.
Yeah. I find that a very interesting thing because for me, I love to work with expert-based businesses because those are the people that I know, the people who know something really, really, really well, be it because of their profession or because of their passion for something. And that's what they want to speak about. And the one thing that I think is very important is that you know who you're talking to.
Yes.
Because there are so many podcasters out there I could try and help, but I don't know how to help you if you just want to be like, I don't know, my pet hate for Joe Rogan will come out. But if you want to be the next Joe Rogan, just talking about stuff and having a drink with your mates and whatever, that's cool. Right. But that's not what I can help you with because I don't listen to that stuff and it's just not my thing. Yeah. So for me, it was really important to speak to expert-based businesses because I think lots of people have so much value to give and no platform to do so that's really working for them. And that's why I think podcasting can be so amazing. So I totally agree that if you feel that the group that you are speaking to is so clear to you because you've been in those exact places, you have all the experiences that you can refer to, your message is always going to be so much clearer because you know exactly what it feels like. And yes, the longer time passes, the more you will detach and you will forget some things. But it just takes, I don't know, one of the listeners to share one of their stories and you're like, oh my God, I remember that time where that happened to me. Like I've actually been in that situation. I've just forgotten about it.
Yes.
So I 100% think that it's probably going to be the right decision, particularly if you're feeling like you're not speaking to the people that you're wanting to speak to because you're having to keep it vague.
Well, it's not so much that I'm not speaking to the people I want to speak with. In my business, I don't work exclusively with single moms. I work with anybody who needs help with their day-to-day personal finances and, looking at some of those money mindset stories we talked about earlier and budgeting and saving and figuring out what their goals are and making a plan to achieve those goals. And I have clients who are, male, female, younger, older. But with the podcast, the podcast originally, the idea was as a vehicle to get my name out there and to attract clients more than the podcast itself being a moneymaker. And it has done that to some extent, but there's just something telling me I need to be speaking to single women. And I do see as a possibility in the future doing some kind of, single mom membership program or course or something that speaks specifically to the issues facing single moms.
Yeah, 100%. I think where that passion lies, it's where you've got to follow. And I think that's something, if we all did more of that, more of the things that we want to do and that we feel so strongly about. Like I was watching Maid the other day. I just kind of got sucked into watching it because everyone was watching it.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is like the prime example. I've spoken to so many parents in that very exact situation. And I have had to be the person in the miserable office when the parent comes in, it's like, I need help, to say, there is nothing that we can offer. I can send you to these people who probably will also have nothing to offer because you have a roof over your head or because of this or because of that. And if there's something that you find is close to your heart, taking a step in that direction is never going to be the wrong choice because the fire is there to do something.
I agree.
And I would absolutely follow that. Hey, are you spending hours extra editing every other week because you forgot to do things like switching off your aircon or moving the dog outside of the house? Did you secure an amazing guest interview only to then forget to press record? Or maybe your guest forgot to press record and now you have to work with a really low quality backup recording? Do you want to batch your show and finally get ahead, but you can't for the life of you remember what's already done and what's not? Don't worry, this is really normal. There are way more steps involved in running a successful, high-quality podcast than meets the eye, and it's really easy to forget something here and there. But let's be realistic. If you really want to grow your show, you can't carry on like this. If you want to design a podcasting workflow that works, then grab our podcast workflow blueprint now. You'll get immediate access to our entire podcast workflow that we've been using with all of our clients for months. The blueprint contains a video training that explains exactly how our system works, the Trello board template that you can just plug into your account or transfer to your platform of choice, the fully customizable template episode workflows, guest email swipes, and as a bonus, the guest booking automation video training. You can check it all out and get your copy at pristinepodcast.com/blueprint. And now back to the episode. What made you go with podcasting as a medium? Why not do YouTube? Why not blogging? Why not, pretty much anything else that you could go down?
I have written a couple of blogs before and I enjoyed doing it, but it took me freaking forever. To write a blog post, maybe it brings out my perfectionist qualities, but especially if the post involved some research, hours. And, I listen to these people who say, it takes me an hour to write a blog post. And I'm like, really? How do you do that? Because it would take me so long to write a blog post. It was a big part of my life, getting a blog post out every week. I love to write, and I really love to edit once something's written, because that's a lot easier than actually writing it in the first place. And I liked writing the blog. And, who knows, I might go back to it at some point, but it just took me such a long time. And I thought with podcasting, I knew that there was going to be time involved with editing and all of that, because I'm not at the point where I can hire somebody to, do all of that for me. But I can outline something rather than write out a whole thing and then sit and talk. Or I can interview somebody, and it's fun. And I find I'm looking forward to it rather than saying, I have to get that blog post out. And, I'm actually probably spending almost as much time between the outlining, the actual recording, and the editing and the getting it out there as I was with the blog post. But for some reason, it doesn't feel as heavy.
Heavy being, I think, the word, because that's what I feel like when I have to. I think for me, blog posts are still okay, but they do take me longer than recording an episode for sure. But yeah, it's when I have to write the social media posts, I'm like, I don't really enjoy this. It feels so taken out of context, and you can't really add the things that you want to add, because now you're over the character. So I've kind of said half the things, and I'm like, really, this doesn't belong here. This needs to be its own thing. So definitely I can understand that heaviness feeling. And I always say I have too many bad hair days to pull off YouTube regularly because I just don't want to record. I'm so mindfully aware. I mean, the people can't see us after we've published this because there isn't going to be a video version of it. But, I'm always mindfully aware if I need to go and get my hair colored. And I'm like, no, I don't want to do a video today because I have to get my hair colored. And today I look like this. And I don't know. I'm not obsessed, and I can go out without wearing makeup and things like that. Yeah. I don't care about that part, but I don't know, like YouTube regularly, I can't. So for me, it was like the happy medium.
Right. And it's funny because my daughters, who are now 18 and 23, particularly my younger daughter, is so comfortable in front of a camera. She's grown up with taking pictures and sending them to friends of like silly things she's done. And she doesn't care if she looks goofy or, whatever. It's what she's grown up with. I didn't grow up in that culture, and I'm a little bit camera shy. I occasionally do a Facebook Live or an Instagram Live, but I'm getting more and more comfortable being on camera, kind of letting my hair down and being myself rather than that whole perfectionist thing where, it has to be perfect for one reason or another. But podcasting just feels right to me. It feels like that perfect combination of being able to get my thoughts and ideas out there so that I can help people without having to have my face on camera. Although who knows, in the future, maybe at some point I'll do YouTube, but at this point I doubt it, but who knows? And without having to, write every week.
Yeah, that makes sense. I totally agree with that. How long did it take you from when you first thought, hey, I could do a podcast, to actually getting it out there? I always find there's like a huge range when people start thinking about it and when something actually happens. So did you find that there was a delay, or was it more like, right, I'm doing this?
I think like most things in my life, I think about them for a long time before I execute. So I thought about having kids for a long time before I actually went and adopted my kids. I thought about opening my preschool for a long time before I actually quit my job and did it. I thought about financial coaching for a long time before I actually did it. So that's sort of my modus operandi. I think about things for a while. So I had been thinking about a podcast for quite a while. I didn't have anything formulated, or, I just said, I'd like to do a podcast. And so I actually stopped writing my blog. And again, I may go back to it. People still look at it. It's a blog focused on people over the age of 50 who are interested in financial independence. and, what people can do if they're starting late. And I started a Facebook group around that, and it's grown now to like 4,000 members. And, so there's interest there, and I may eventually go back to that in some form. But I wanted, again, that single mom thing was pulling me, and I wanted to do something around sort of the three things that are the biggest pulls in my life, which is single parenting, personal finance, and parenting. So those are the things that had me started. So I'd say when I really started thinking seriously about it to execution, maybe 3 or 4 months.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. I mean, thinking about it for a long time before that, but then getting serious about it, it was about 3 or 4 months because I had a big learning curve. I knew nothing, and I didn't take a course. I just Googled how to do a podcast. I Googled how to use Audacity. What are the settings that I should use on Audacity to make it sound good? What should I do to increase sound quality? I Googled all of that. So I had a big learning curve. I practiced on Audacity and, made some recordings and did some silly interviews with my kids and, all of that. And then finally I felt like I was ready.
Was there anything you felt very, particularly, apprehensive of before you started? Was there any one thing where you're like, oh, I put this off to the last minute kind of thing?
I think it was marketing. I mean, marketing, social media marketing is still a big kind of bugaboo for me. I love doing the podcast. And I'm still learning how to get the word out there and how to market it and where to show up and where to tell people about it.
Yeah, there's a huge learning curve at the beginning. And that stops a lot of people who feel like, oh, I have to figure these things out about the mic and the recording and the editing. And I don't really know how to do that. And that's one heap.
Yes.
But then the other group, I think, gets to the point where they've got that figured out. And then the episodes are coming out. But then it's like, oh, right. Now, how do I get people to actually listen to it? And I think that is where, particularly if you don't love social media,
yes,
it's kind of a thing where you're like, oh, I have to kind of keep showing up there. And I think that's something that definitely we need to speak to way more in the upcoming episodes because, it just takes a long time.
I would love to listen to those episodes.
100%.
I can still use the help.
Oh, same. I guess we've been doing marketing with clients and things for 6 years, but when it's your own things, it's actually easier to market your clients' things than it's to market your own because your own, you always have that thing of but what if it's not quite good enough?
Yeah.
And what if people are not going to like this thing? And that doesn't go when it's your own. Whereas if it's someone else's, I know how good it is, but it's not mine. So I'm kind of removed.
Yes.
How did you feel before releasing the first episode?
Scared, sort of I'm actually out there. People might actually listen to this. And people did, and I got some good feedback and kept going. So, but I was apprehensive putting that first one out there. But, I had this little mantra that I kept telling myself, which was, good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect, sound quality. As long as it doesn't sound tinny and super amateurish, then good enough. I'll improve as I go along. My main concern was always content. I wanted to have really excellent content. I really wanted to, get information and stories out there that would help people and that people would want to listen to. So,
and I think content over sound quality, any day. So maybe it's just the group of perfectionists who's it has to be the best that it can be. Otherwise, we're not going to be happy about it. But I think if the content's amazing and if you're sharing so much value that the listeners are picking up things that they can go take away and make improvements on their lives immediately.
Yes.
Every episode, they're picking up one thing and implementing it and making their lives a little bit better and picking up another thing and making their lives a little bit better. You're going to be the go-to expert. Yes. Even if you don't have the top mic and even if you can't afford to invest, I don't know how much into your environment, it's just getting started and not telling yourself that I can't do this because I can't do this because I can't do this because is the hardest part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was there a point where you thought, well, I feel more comfortable with this now? Like, it becomes like an everyday thing. Like, I'm just doing a podcast.
Yeah. I don't think that there was one moment I can point to, but like anything you do in life, the more you do it, the more you learn and know, and the easier it becomes. I have committed to consistency. There was 1 week I missed, and I felt so badly about that. Just because, I was moving my daughter to San Francisco and I hadn't batched the way I should have. And, I just couldn't do it that week. But other than that, I've been consistent, and I'm proud of that, that I've just been pumping episodes out there. And I think consistency is really important. So.
Yeah. And it's a big struggle. Like, I'm not a naturally consistent person. I like to put in like a burst of energy, and then I like to not touch it for a while. So I have to use batching. I don't think it's a should. Some people are really good at just consistently every Tuesday between 10 and 11 to be in the mood to record. Right. And every Wednesday, they're in the mood to be editing. And every Thursday, they're in the mood to write the copy to promo it. Right. And I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm in the mood for recording for like 8 hours straight. But then I legit don't want to be recording for a very long time, because I've said what I needed to say.
Yeah. Yes.
So I don't know, batching to me, it's not an option. It's more like if I want to get it done, the only way is actually going to be to batch it, because it's not gonna happen.
Well, batching definitely makes it so much easier. When I have 3 or 4 episodes that I record in 1 week, and then I don't have to worry about it for a little while. It does open space up, and it makes things easier.
Yeah. And then it gives you more time to promo as well, because that's what takes the most energy to keep showing up. And when you feel like you're chasing your tail, you don't really pay as much attention to the promotion, because like, I have to get to the next one because I haven't done that yet. Yes. And that's when I find it's my top excuse to like not go and promo something.
Yes.
Because I feel like I'm late and I should be doing the next recording part and not be here on social media telling people about it. And actually, it's all important, not just that one thing.
Yes, for sure.
I have a money specific question. And that is, I've noticed a lot of the people that we've worked with that are new to, I don't want to say running businesses, because not all of them run a business, but the podcast kind of is a business for some of them.
Yeah.
Or they want it to be in any case. Lots of people struggle with the idea of asking for money when it comes to producing content, because they're like, well, I'll do the podcast and the podcast is free, and I feel bad to ask them to buy this thing that I made, or I feel bad to ask them to donate or to sign up to my Patreon. Although I am going to be giving them lots of value, but I feel bad for doing that.
Yes.
Is there anything that you can share that might help to shift that mindset around being paid for something that you do that's actually very valuable to other people who'd be very happy to pay you? Yes. And they don't have a problem with it. The problem seems to be like within.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I empathize and I understand that hesitation. And, as I said, I hadn't conceived of my podcast as a moneymaker in and of itself. I was using it more to have people know about me and to attract potential clients. And it has done that to some extent. I mean, not to the extent yet that I would like it to. But more and more, I think, as you do what you do and you get feedback from what you do, you feel stronger in the value that you're providing. So as a total newbie financial coach, I was really worried about, what do I charge people? And should I even be charging people because I'm new to this and all of that? And as time has gone by and I have seen the really sometimes unbelievable changes people have made in their lives and the benefits to them, I'm like, wow, these services are really valuable. And I have a much less of an issue now. Even I recently raised my prices, and because I just know the value that I can provide.
It often pays back like tenfold. There's no doubt about it. That's what I mean.
Right.
Like the people are often perfectly happy to pay for it.
Right. So I would say once you are out there a little bit and you're starting to get some feedback, use that feedback. Use those comments that you're getting and, wow, this was really helpful. And, I really liked this. And I'm starting to do some of these things that you're suggesting. And when you start hearing things like that, you can build up your confidence so that whether it's a product you're trying to sell, I am eventually going to be selling some products through my podcast. I'm not doing it yet, but I'm working on creating some of them. And, as I said before, possibly, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to pan out, but possibly a membership site for single moms where there'll be discussion, community, resources, courses, all sorts of things. But it can't hurt to try. Just try, on a small scale, see how it goes. And if it doesn't work, don't take that as, oh, this will never work. Try something else. And just keep going until you hit what connects with your audience and makes people dying to buy something from you.
Yeah. And I think that's why that community aspect is so important. And I think if we shift our focus a little bit from just marketing, which is a bit like talking at people, to having it be talking to people and building actual genuine relationships somewhere.
Exactly.
It makes it feel less like you're just going, hello, listen to my stuff. Hello, listen to my stuff, And it's actually like, hey, this is very valuable for you. You might want to, check that out. But then also like asking people actual questions about themselves without the intent of necessarily wanting to like, I don't know, when someone's talking to you and they just want to sell you something. So I am not really interested in that, but I mean like genuinely finding out about those people. And then you start generating those conversations when people have the chance to give you that feedback. And then suddenly they go, oh my God, like I listened to this and I listened to that and I listened to that and you were so right. And I made this change and that. And then you see the value. But if you're just like podcasting in your isolated bubble and you're not interacting with people, you can't get that feedback.
Right.
And I think that's really a super, super, super good point.
Yeah.
So we're already somehow coming to the end of the time that I'd booked in for the interview.
All right.
Which almost makes me think that I should maybe plan more time for the future ones. There's so many interesting people to talk to. Like I don't know. I love who we're getting to meet just through the work and things. Like it's amazing.
Isn't it great? Yeah. Isn't it great? You get to meet so many interesting and fantastic people by interviewing them.
Yeah. And international people, it's a great actual community. I really, that's one thing I've really liked about doing things like podcasting or working online is like, I've never met so many people from so many different places who do so many interesting things. And I want to know about all of them. So if people are listening and they're thinking, okay, where do I find out more? I think there's going to be a lot of people who will be very interested, particularly if you're also going down the community building route, because I really think that that's a group that often gets pushed out a huge amount where it's like, oh, well, it's a bit, I guess it's a lot of shame and guilt still around. And that's where I think community is so important to like have that be eradicated. So where can people find out more about you? And also, I would really like to see that launch. I think it's important.
Thank you. Yeah. So first of all, you could listen to my podcast, which is called Finance Your Dream, and you can search for it on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen. Links. Yeah, wherever you listen. You can go to my website, which is moneysmartforlife.com. And I do have a Facebook group that's a private group, but is, not a paid group. So you can look for it on Facebook if you're a single mom. And it's called Money, Parenting, and Life for Single Moms. So that's another place that you can find me, or my Facebook page, Money Smart for Life.
Awesome. I'll ask you to drop the link to the group in again, and then I'll put that all in the show notes so that everyone can just go down to the show notes and
excellent,
and find you and get the community that they need, because I think it really does matter.
Thank you.
any one tip that you would give someone along their journey? Something maybe someone shared with you or something you've read somewhere that's maybe become like a bit of a mantra? Or that could be.
Well, I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier, which is good enough is good enough. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to sound like you're on National Public Radio or, where they have a team of, many, many people working to make it sound perfect. Just get good content out there. Focus on your content, make it sound as good as you can, given your resources and, Google how to do it, and just go for it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for doing this interview today. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It was a pleasure. It was really fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much again to Debra for doing this interview with me today. I really, really, really appreciate it because if you're doing a podcast already, it can be a little bit tricky, particularly in the beginning stages, to find people that are happy to talk to you, who fit the kind of ideal person that you are looking for. And I think you have to be quite selective with who you invite because it just has to line up with what you really want to talk about and what you want people to be able to take away from that. And I really appreciate that Debra took the time to meet with me and to share some of her journey and to share some of her initial fears. And you can just see and feel that transformation that's happened within her, where in the beginning, it was all very tentative and, she wasn't feeling very sure about it. But now that she's been doing it for actually not in the grand scheme of life, for not that much of a long time, you can see that change that's already happened and the amount of motivation that she's gained for it and how passionate she is about helping her ideal listener to get the most out of the show. And that's something that I really enjoyed hearing from her. So with all of the things that we talked about, we are coming to the end of this episode. As always, if you enjoyed the show, feel free to leave us a review. Me and the whole team would appreciate it. If you have any other podcasting friends that you think could benefit from this show, please let them know about us. It's always amazing to welcome new listeners. And as always, I hope you have an amazing day and I'll see you for the next one. That's it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. If you're ready to step out of overwhelm, then don't forget to check out the podcast workflow blueprint at pristinepodcast.com/blueprint. The link is also in the show notes.